You're listening to Kill Cliff's Hazard Ground podcast, with service members from across the military sharing their stories of combat and survival. And now, here's your host, Mark Zinno.
Welcome into the Hazard Ground podcast. As always, we appreciate you joining us each and every week. Before we get to this week's episode featuring a Navy SEAL and Tillman Scholar, just a few notes as usual. Don't forget to follow us on all the social media sites, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Hazard Ground Podcast. Keep up with the show. Of course, keep in contact with us. Send us guest suggestions. We take them all right there. Don't forget about our promotion with Amazon on our website, hazardground.com. You go there first and click on the Amazon button at the bottom of the homepage, or under the sponsors tab, you get redirected to the Amazon website. Do all your normal shopping. We'll get a percentage of what you guys spend, and then we donate a percentage of that back to some of the great charities and organizations that have been featured here on the show. Does the same thing from your smartphone. So if you go to hazardground.com on your smartphone, it'll redirect you right to the Amazon app. All credit card information is saved. Really convenient, really easy. Make sure you do it. Go to our YouTube page and like and subscribe the show on YouTube at Hazard Ground as well. Don't forget to download the Kill Cliff app and Kill Cliff TV. You can get all of our video episodes right there on the Kill Cliff app, Kill Cliff TV as well. And of course, Kill Cliff continues to be great friend and partner of the show. Make sure you go to killcliff.com to get all of your clean energy drinks, including their CBD products, as I'm holding up the Killer Cliff Sickle with CBD in it. Just a fantastic line of products. A big fan. I use them all. I use the pre-workout, the Ignite, the post-workout, the Recover. These are just clean energy drinks. Navy SEAL Foundation, huge proceeds benefit Navy SEAL Foundation. Over $1 million already donated to the Navy SEAL Foundation from Kill Cliff. So continue to support them as well at killcliff.com. Don't forget to leave us our reviews on Apple. Help grow the show. Trying to crack that top 100 Apple podcast. We can do it with your help. A short review. Give us 5 stars. Doesn't have to be anything lengthy. Tell us why you love the show. We certainly appreciate it, and that'll help us grow this Hazard Ground community. All right, on to this week's guest. Again, a man who went to the Naval Academy. After the Naval Academy, went into the SEAL team, spent 9 total years of service at multiple deployments overseas, left the military, and went on to go get his MBA at the Wharton School of Business. That means he's smart. But he also became a Tillman Scholar, a Pat Tillman Military Scholar, which is an amazing, amazing organization, obviously named after Pat Tillman. We've had several Tillman Scholars on the show. After spending a couple of years at Google, went on to start his own company called Madefor, which he is now the CEO of, and he is Patrick Dossett joining us on the Hazard Ground. Pat, welcome, man, and thank you for being here.
Thanks, Mark. Great to be here. I've been called a lot of things. I don't know that I've ever been called smart, but I'll take it from you. So
yeah,
thanks.
Well, again, anytime you go to a school that has a name in front of the school for business, that means somebody smart went there and made the school. So by transference, you automatically are smart. You see how that works?
All right. I like that.
Again, congratulations on being a Tillman Scholar. It's not easy. It is one of the more notable, things I think that military veterans who get named to be a Tillman Scholar. We've had several of them on. Just an incredible foundation. Obviously, Pat was an incredible human being, but nonetheless, I feel like for Tillman Scholars, it's always sort of that special feather in your cap, so to speak.
Yeah, it's an amazing honor. And I think obviously the example that Pat set and continuing to see that legacy lived out through the scholars and the work that Marie does and the whole foundation, just people that want to continue to serve, whether or not they're still in uniform or outside of uniform. It's a pretty powerful community to be a part of. And I'm honored to be a part of it.
Certainly the SEAL community as well. Very tight knit, very powerful. Obviously it's a long road to get there, but you started in Annapolis at the Naval Academy. How and why?
I did. I started in about 7th grade. I was one of the probably many kids who read Dick Marcinko's books. I read a book called Rogue Warrior in 7th grade, and something about that book, I don't just the way that he described the community, the nature of the job, just he made it sound impossible, but also that the sacrifices and the cost associated with the work was worth it. And it was a really special group to be a part of. And for whatever reason, that planted a seed inside me that I said, this is what I want to do. And I started working towards that and was fortunate enough to get a slot to the academy. I didn't get it on the first go. I think I got I got a letter saying, we can't accept you to the academy, but you can come into the prep school and give it a shot. And so I was all fired up. And about 2 days before getting ready to head off to the prep school, I got a call from the academy, and they said, actually, someone just dropped out. We have a spot open up if you want to go. And I said, yeah. And the rest is history. So spent 4 years at the academy. You know, I was one of these people that I went there with the only reason I wanted to go to the Naval Academy, because when I was going through the list of colleges, I saw there was one called Navy, and I knew I wanted to be a Navy SEAL, but I really didn't know much about it. When I showed up, everything for me was about, what do I need to do to become a SEAL or to get a spot? And I just assumed if I get into the school and I want to be a SEAL, that just happens automatically. But I soon found out that they only have, 16 slots a year, at least when I was there, to go. A lot of people competing for it. And it wasn't guaranteed. And if you didn't get a slot into the SEAL teams, then you were probably going to ride a ship. And for me, that was just not acceptable. I get seasick. The thought of being on ships for long periods of time was not exciting to me. And so I worked really hard. I found out that if you boxed and you could do well in boxing, that every year a few boxers would get slots to SEALs, and that became my focus. And so I worked real hard in the ring. I'm not super athletic, but I have a hard head and hard fist, and that got me, what I needed to ultimately get a slot to training. So,
all right, there's a lot going on here. So, you said 7 years old. When a kid that age tells his parents they want to be a Navy SEAL, what is the reaction? Did they just sort of blow you off and think it was a phase, that it was, hey, I want to be a fireman, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a Navy SEAL? Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, seventh grade. I think it was 13, and I think the initial reaction is like, oh, that's nice. You have something that you're excited about, and hey, you're reading a book, so that's really great. Like, we want you to read, and but I think over time they started to realize that I was really serious about this, and they could see how serious I was, and so when the Naval Academy thing came about, they're like, well, this is great. We don't have to pay for college. This is awesome. And then, every year as I got a little bit closer and closer towards the goal, it became a little more real. And so when I was a senior, they have service assignment day. Everyone, gets called in, and you list your preferences, and you find out on this one particular day, what you're getting assigned to, if you're going to be a Marine or a SWO, or going to be a SEAL. And find out I was going to be a SEAL, and called my parents right after and said, hey, I got a slot to SEAL training. I'm super excited. And they were like, that's amazing. And then we hung up. And then 15 seconds later, my mom called me back just crying. She said, I knew you wanted to do this, but I never thought it was actually going to happen. And now it's happening, and I'm not happy about it. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, because one thing happened your senior year of college that we'll get to in a minute, but I did want to just stay along the lines of the academy. You mentioned that you had to go to the prep school and they called you and had a slot. Were you unnerved by the fact that, it was almost, I don't want to say like second choice, but like, hey man, you weren't good enough to get it the first time. Oh, somebody dropped out. Now we'll take you in, kind of deal.
No, you know what? My mindset was I don't know if it was warped or what, but I was actually, when they told me, you're going to go to NAPS and this is going to be your path, I figured out, how to make what the story was in my mind. It was like, all right, well, now I'm really going to crush the academy. I'm going to spend a year. I'm going to train. I'm going to get everything figured out. And then when I show up, I'll just be that much more prepared. And I'd kind of, wrap my mind around that. And so when they called and said, hey, we have a slot open, I actually said, I need to talk to my parents. Can I call you back in like an hour or so? Because I'm not sure, because I had already in my mind determined, hey, I'm going to do this NAPS thing, and that's the best path. But ultimately my parents said, you're an idiot. Like, yeah, take the slot right in. And so I did. And, again, never been called smart, but that it
smart takes practice, Pat. It takes practice,
I try to fall forward.
Yeah, that's it. It's it. I try to fail up. It just hasn't worked for me yet. I just keep failing in the wrong direction. So, senior year of the academy, 9/11 happens, correct?
Yeah. 9/11. I remember I was walking to, was just coming out of a psychology class. I was walking into an ocean engineering class, and all the midshipmen were like ants kind of spread across this campus, and, a lot of people walking by, and I heard someone mentioned, hey, like an airplane struck a building, something along those lines, but just in passing. And then they had just installed these TVs outside of my class. And as I was walking into class, I saw, obviously one of the towers had been struck, and I said, oh, that's kind of strange. But we just looking at it, it didn't look mean, who knows? I didn't know what to make of it, but went into class, and I remember the class was taught by a Korean exchange officer, Commander Boo. And Commander Boo was trying to get us all to, focus on the engineering lab that was at hand. And it just kept going back out and watching the TV, and then saw the second plane hit. And right then, obviously, well, this is different. Something's wrong. And he kept trying to pull us into the class, and we were just like stuck in front of the TV. And a short while later, they pushed all of the civilian staff off the academy grounds. Marines threw up barricades at the various gates. They started rotating the midshipmen around to eat, so we wouldn't all be in one place at the same time, and staggering us. And I think we were in that posture for maybe 4 or 5 days. Classes were canceled. And at the same time, there's a lot of rumor going around like, well, the academy is a target, or they found this or this, all of these things. You just weren't quite sure what to make of it. But the one thing you knew was that that we were going to be in a fight, that as soon as we graduated, no longer was it this kind of nebulous, so I wonder what work I'm going to be doing. I want, you figure going into the SEAL teams, you're going to have some form of work to do no matter what's going on. But after 9/11, it just became every moment that you had leading up to training and graduation, whatnot, just became that much more serious, and it mattered. And you said, all right, well, every day I need to train, because soon I'm going to be in a fight and I need to be ready for it. So
yeah, it must be so hard to process as a kid. And again, a lot of us, including myself, we all signed up in a pre 9/11 world where, at least for me, like combat was like the furthest thing from my mind. Like it just wasn't in my conscience. I used ROTC as a means to an end. Like, I'm like, hey, I'm going to go pay for school. I'll go do the Army thing, and then I'll figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. I'll be 24, 26 years old, whatever it is, when I decide to get out. And I still got my whole life ahead of me. I never really thought that combat was going to be part of my life at any point. Now, you wanting to be a SEAL, I think you already had a predetermined feeling that combat was something that you wanted to do. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to work hard and train hard and be tested. And ultimately, I think the highest form of test is to lead men in combat, men and women in combat. And so that is absolutely what I signed up for and what I had hoped to achieve. But I think, look, everyone comes into the military for a lot of different reasons, whether it's for, want an adventure or change of pace, or you want, to pay for college. But I think if you're in for any length of time, this idea of service and sacrifice just becomes part of the fabric of who you are. And if you're in a time of combat deployments and real world work, and people are dying, then that just gets imprinted on you that much more. So yeah, it was, it just became, I think 9/11 created a level of intentionality and focus, and just a greater gravitas towards, a weight towards everything that you did, because you knew at some point lives are going to be on the line.
I'll tell you, I never really said this before, but you just said it in a way that sort of jarred my brain. But I think intent was the perfect word for people like me. And I think many of us who signed up in a pre 9/11 world, who thought the military was going to be X and it turned out to be Y. Y came with purpose, right? It came with intention. All of a sudden, your service had a greater intention than what you intended for it. And again, there were many people who said they were going to do the military and signed up pre 9/11 and made a 20-year career and then some, and that was always their intention. But I would tell you that a lot of those people, again, didn't sign up with combat in the front of their mind saying, I want to be in the military because I want to be in combat, because there was none. For a good 25-year period, there was none. Yeah. I mean, sure, Desert Storm, but you farted and Desert Storm was over. Like it went that quick. So, for the fortunate few that got to go there, that was kind of what you got to do. But beyond that, it just wasn't anything that was ever in my thought process. So I think intent was a really valuable word. But I do want to ask you, when your mother called you back and said, no, I don't want you to do it. What was the rest of that conversation like? Because she knew what was in your future immediately.
Yeah. It probably wasn't covered on that call, but over time, what I explained to her was like, look, if I couldn't be in a better position, if you're going to be in the military, you want to be around the best, and you want to be, you want to have high level of training. You want to, you want to be an asset, a valuable asset, because valuable assets, not only can they have great effects, but they're also, there is just another level of, I don't know, diligence to how you're deployed. So even though you're going into the breach, or you're going, into hot zones, you're going in with the best people, with the best training, with the best equipment, and you know this as well, but you stack the deck in your favor. It's not like we're just going out there to, react to contact. We're actually going out there and we're going to stack the deck so that we win. And that's what you want to be. And I always, I remember being out in, Iraq and watching those logistics convoys go down Route Irish and just thinking, oh my God, there's these young kids that are just lined up, driving these trucks, long convoys. And to me, those are some of the most, brave individuals, because I don't know. It just, for me, that just seems like, you're just,
that was me for 3 or 4 days a week for a year plus straight.
Yeah. And we wouldn't have been able to do anything had you not been doing that. And so there, oftentimes we hold up small segments of the military as like, hey, these are the tip of the spear, these are this, but at the end of the day, it is an organization and it requires everyone. And if one part of that isn't showing up for their job, the whole thing fumbles and the whole thing breaks down very quickly. And
I always say that it's your piece of the pie. Some people's piece of the pie is bigger. Some people's piece of the pie is more important, but you don't get the whole pie without every piece of the pie. And the whole pie is what is needed. So my piece of the pie was that that was part of my piece of the pie, but that was my piece of the pie for the better part of a year plus. And, I was happy to do it. Like, it's one of those things. And I remember writing this in my journal that was the most in my life I ever enjoyed, being like a role player, if you will. Like, I didn't need to be elevated. I didn't need to be in a spotlight or in a high level unit or, going after high value targets or anything like that and kicking down doors all the time. Although some of that stuff I got to do, I enjoyed my role, right? Because I knew my role was critical to the success of others, and that was enough for me.
I think that's everything. I think that's spot on. If you can directly tie your efforts towards the larger mission and to the importance of what's going on, then I think that is the most important thing. And it's interesting, on my first deployment to Iraq, the SEAL teams had taken on this role of PSD for the top 4 or 5, individuals in the Iraqi government. So prime minister and president and a couple of the other positions. And for SEALs, you have this very offensive mindset. I want to go do DAs, or I want to do, whatever the mission set is, but it's something that it has an element of offensive, and it's very offensive in nature. And we get tasked with this personal security mission set. And man, that couldn't be, at least in your mindset, you're thinking like, well, now I'm a catcher's mitt for whatever wants to come my way. And like, that doesn't feel really good. And so you have to do the analysis and the thinking on it and say like, all right, well, why does this matter? Why is this important? Well, if the PMs or the presidents keep getting knocked off, then none of this works, right? They're not going to be able to set up their own government. They're not going to be able to, a lot of the work that the collective military is doing is going to be futile because they can't get in place what they need to get in place. And so you play these games to figure out, how can I say that this work is important or this work matters? And at the end of the day, you execute on the mission that's presented to you, right? So we don't get to choose our mission sets, but the mission sets that come down, you want to crush them, you want to do them, you want to do them perfectly, you want to do a good job, and then you want to move off and do other ones. So
let's get to buds, because right after graduation, do you immediately go there, or is there a little bit of lag in time, or how does that happen?
Yeah. So 16 guys out of my academy class all went off to SEAL training, and they staggered us up into 3 groups. So first group went off in that summer right after graduation. And then second group went off maybe 5 months later. And then so staggered through a few different buds classes. My group went out. We were a winter buds class. And so there were 5 of us or 6 of us that all went out together and checked in together, got a house down at the southern end of Coronado in the Coronado Cays, lived together and went through buds together. And it was awesome. It was the best. I mean, it's so easy to, yeah. so easy to look back now and say like, oh, that was, obviously some of the real painful stuff that fades in your memory, but you just remember, hey, we got paid to work out on the beach and train, and it was awesome.
Now, were you the guy going in buds that read up as much as you could and tried to find out what you were in store for as much as possible? Or were you the guy who just said, I'll just figure it out as I go through it?
Yeah, I think you can't help, because being in the academy, every year going through physical assessments, you're doing, interviews, and you're constantly getting racked and stacked against your peers. You spend a summer, one of the summer your junior year, you go out and you spend a few weeks going through, they called it mini buds at the time, but get a little taste of buds and then go in bed with the team for a couple of weeks. And so I think everyone that was coming out of the academy was very, very well prepared, and had a sense of what was in store. Now, you never know everything. And at some point you say, okay, I know enough, like, let's just go do this and let's let the cards fall where they may. But yeah, so I had a good sense of what was in store, but you never know it until I think sometimes knowledge can serve as a detriment. If you feel like, all right, I just need to game this thing perfectly, and then like, I'll get through it. Like, that's absolutely the wrong mentality to bring into buds, because it's not a matter of if, but when they figure out what your weak spot is, and they just keep pressing on it until you either callous up or you quit.
Buds for you, more of a physical challenge or more of a mental challenge?
Ooh, it's hard to separate those out. I think they're so closely interlinked. I think, buds uses the physical as a proxy to test the mental. And so it is an ebb and flow. I was fortunate that, I didn't have any major injuries as I was going through buds. Some of that is luck, some of that is a level of preparation, but everyone at some point as they're going through training just has to suck it up and deal. And I was no exception there. But I think when you're doing that, part of it is, relying on your physical, the physical training and foundation that you've laid. But a bigger part of it, a much larger part of it is, the mental game that you have to play to make it.
Hardest part for you of buds?
Oh God. I really don't like being cold and wet. And so if I'm being honest, I just don't like being cold and wet. And so I think that was not that it's hard, because you just deal, it just sucks. But that was probably my least favorite. Right behind that, or maybe equal with that, is running with a boat on my head. I'm a bigger guy and never able to fully get a good stride. And it always seemed there was an instructor around anytime that my boat crew was running with our boat, and they were throwing sand in there or hopping up inside the boat and jumping up and down. And I never really enjoyed that. But, again, when I look back on it now, there were probably so many times where I had to dig deep, and I had to move the finish line very close in to say hey, I know I can go another 5 yards or 20 yards. Forget about trying to make it through the day or make it to the next meal. It's literally how far can my eyes see? All right, I think I can make it to that point. And then once I get there, I'll reassess. And so you're constantly playing that game, and that you just do what you got to do to make it.
Yeah. Guy who gets seasick, doesn't like cold and wet, wanted to be a SEAL. Just making sure I got the score accurate before we continue here.
I'm not a very smart man. I told you.
No, again, you put one over on the Wharton School of Business. That's for sure. No, but you finish buds, and then obviously you got to go through, the next phase onto the teams and everything else. So where are we sort of month, year, time wise? And what are you hearing about, where you're going and how quickly you're going to get to a team?
Yeah. So this would have been early 2003, graduate from buds. And then there's a whole phase of additional follow-on training that you do before you can show up to a team. So we had to go out to Fort Benning and do static line jump school, which was incredibly challenging for some different reasons, not challenging like buds, but just challenging in a different way. And then you go through free fall school, you go through SQT, which is our SEAL qualification training. So you're doing more advanced demolition and tactics and weapons and diving and all of that. So getting a basic foundational skill set so that you're not a liability when you show up to your team. And then I think the final thing you do is go up to, at least when I was going through, we'd go up to Kodiak through winter warfare training, spend a few weeks up there. And that was really the last phase of training before checking into a team. So I finished all that, checked into SEAL Team 7. and they were just returning back from deployment. So I knew I was going to get a full workup, 18-month workup before we were going to deploy. And at the time, you don't really know where you're going to deploy during that workup cycle. They kind of keep their cards close. Part of it is, how are the teams being deployed out across the various battle spaces, and then two, within the team, which platoons are going to go where. So you have some platoons that maybe go to the Philippines, or some platoons that go down in Southcom, or some that go to the Middle East. And so it's always a little bit of an unknown until you get further along through training, and they assess the various platoons and then make decisions from there. So
when you first get to your team, now again, you're on the officer side, so you're obviously taking charge of this whole team. What's your mentality going in? I've spoken to dozens of enlisted, Green Berets and enlisted SEALs who, have to go through this sort of rite of passage still. You get hazed a little bit when you get there. You're the FNG when you're on the team and everything else. But those guys also aren't the OIC of the team. So you walk into this role. What is your sort of mindset in sort of endearing yourself to a new group of SEALs that you just met, and leadership philosophy and things of that nature?
Yeah. So as a new SEAL officer, you'll start as an AOIC, so assistant officer in charge of a platoon. Sometimes you'll get paired up with you'll have a couple of AOICs under an OIC. That was the case for me. So I had another AOIC that had already done a deployment with a boat detachment, and so had a little bit of experience in the teams, and then the rest of the platoon. I'd say my philosophy and approach was small mouth, big ears. So don't talk a lot, learn as much as possible, really try to get into, leverage that first time at the team as an opportunity to learn boats and motors and communications and what do the snipers do, and really learn all of the various skill sets that the people on the team have, and the equipment that they leverage, so that, again, you're not going to be a liability, but that you can be an asset. Not that the officer is ever going to, be the one, not going to be behind the glass, or not going to be, filling the various, tactical leadership roles, but always going to be pulled back a little bit. But it's a good opportunity to understand what they do, so that you understand how best to serve them when you do find yourself in a leadership position. And so that was my approach. Just learn as much as possible, put out and work hard. And I think, look, there's always an element of new guy and hazing, and it doesn't matter if it's officers or on the enlisted side. But what I found is that the platoons that function best really function like professional team. It was like, hey, do your job. Here are the expectations, exceed the expectations, and then we'll move on, and we'll grow closer over time, and you'll get more and more responsibility as things goes. Those platoons that really were into hazing and, made, where you had maybe some E5s or E6s that wanted to stick it to the new guys. I always found the cohesiveness within those platoons to be not quite as effective as some of the other more professionally run ones. And so,
when do you get to your first deployment?
Let's see, what was it? And maybe 04, beginning of 05, first deployment. So we deployed to the Philippines. It was kind of a mixed bag. We spent half the time in PACOM, and then half the time in Iraq. So I think we were worked in Thailand and the Philippines for about 3 months, and then shifted over to Iraq, and we were there for, I believe, 4 or 5 months.
When you hear that you're going to the Philippines, again, you kind of signed up for this whole deal wanting to be tested and lead people in combat. Are you sort of bothered by the fact that, why the hell are we going to the Philippines? There's nothing going on over there. There's a war in Afghanistan, a war in Iraq, and we're sitting here on a bunch of islands in the South Pacific.
Yeah, you want to be in the fight, no question. And guys are mixing it up and having real impacts on the battle space, and that's where you want to be. That's why you do all the work. But it was even, the Philippines, I think, was actually a step up, because I started in Thailand, and we were there as a part of a joint training exercise. We were training some of the Thai frogmen, and a lot of the guys in the platoon, especially some of the more senior guys, were saying, this is great. Thailand's amazing. It's awesome. You're going to have a good experience. And then, we'll eventually get to Iraq. But I remember sitting in Thailand, and I remember at one point, I think we had like a weekend off or something, and I was getting a massage on the beach, and I just felt like, man, I need to go do something really hard because I'm about to be in Iraq. And like, I feel like I'm just getting, like, I'm a little baby veal just getting massaged for, the slaughter. And so when the Philippine thing came up, I was actually supposed to stay in Thailand for that first half. When the Philippine requirement came up, they were working with the FIL special operations units down there. And there were some interesting things happening there. And so it was at least not training, it was real world. And it was nice to move over there and just to see a different vantage point and get that experience. And I liked it. It was great. And then to go from there to Iraq, and, ultimately where we wanted to be was, that was the best.
Yeah, massage on the beach to a different kind of massage and a different kind of beach when you get to Iraq. I always tell people Iraq's tons of beach, just no ocean. So
that's it.
Where do you end up in Iraq?
Well, so it's funny. When I left the Philippines, I think we ended up flying commercial through Dubai into Kuwait, and then caught a rotator from Kuwait. And so you want to talk about a strange juxtaposition is like landing. I had never been to the Middle East before, landing in Dubai, getting off, and there's like kiosks inside the airport where they're selling gold bars. And there's like these, just the
Dubai
the
is
nicest,
gorgeous.
Oh, it's beautiful. I mean, I never
you have the kind of, I tell somebody, if you got the kind of scratch to go vacation in Dubai, do it. You will not be disappointed. It is amazing.
For me, it was surreal. I was like, oh, wow. Okay. This is different. And we never left the airport. And then a short while later we flew off, and then, maybe 36 hours later, we were stepping off the airplane into Baghdad, and just, you couldn't have polar opposite worlds. And so seeing that compressed in such a short period of time, Thailand, the Philippines, and, being down in a few of the islands around there, and then in Manila, and then very quickly Dubai, and then Baghdad, it was just like, oh my God, my head is just spinning. So it was an interesting entry into that country, but spent the first bit of time there in Baghdad working in and around RPC, and then with
where I was.
Oh yeah, nice, awesome.
Yeah, I was at RPC. Yeah,
and then so we were tasked with taking care of the prime minister, and basically push out various parts of Iraq wherever he was going, and running the personal security for him for a few months, and then finished that up and transitioned off to working up in Tal Afar and doing some counter sniper operations up there. Trying to support the conventional units that were up there, and then came back down to Baghdad to do more traditional DA stuff in and around the city.
I will say, and there are very few people who know RPC, but from a massage on the beach to the pool that you guys had, which was the better of the pools than the one that we had, it wasn't the toughest of actual living situation. So
I never made it to the pool in RPC. I will say that.
You never made it there? I actually got onto the SEAL compound once and got to the pool. It was nice. It was very nice. But the pool at RPC was just as good. But yours was a little more secluded, and a nice little deck there hanging out. So it was good. But
we're good nesters. So you give us a spot, and we'll figure out how to.
I have nothing but respect for the special operations community. The regular Army will find the worst, most dumpiest place to go and go, oh, this is fantastic. And special operations folks will go, well, why would we go there? And we have something over here that's just better. Because the regular Army goes, yeah, we have to embrace the suck. And you've been there. Anyway, so after that first deployment, and you get a chance to do the direct action stuff, and you get a chance to kind of lead folks in combat. What are you thinking is next for you at that point in time?
Yeah. So this is interesting. About halfway through that deployment, the XO of the team sent a note out to all the junior officers, and I had already been picked up to do another AOIC at SEAL Team 7. And so that for a junior officer is the best, because it's more operational time. You're going to need another deployment before you do your OIC tour, which is another deployment. And the game for junior officers is like, how long can you stay operational and deploying in that tactical leadership role? And so I was already set to do another AOIC at SEAL Team 7 when the XO sent an email saying, hey, they're looking for people to do. They're looking for a volunteer to go do an OIC job on the East Coast at a SEAL delivery vehicle team. So these are our mini submarine teams. The SDV Team 2 at the time was based at Little Creek, Virginia. And when that note went out, I said, wow, if I could go do that, it'll be a little bit of a different vantage point, different operational experience, different, a whole different ball game. But what it allows me to do is to get that OIC tour knocked out, so that I can screen and maybe go do some other, tactical leadership positions within the community that I was interested in and excited about. And so I volunteered, and then I got picked up for it. And then a couple months later, as soon as we got back from that deployment, I told my ex, I was like, you know what? I actually really prefer just to stay here in San Diego. I love it here and I'm going to miss it. And this team's great and I want to stay. But at that point, it was too late. So a few months later, I found myself packing up and moving down to Panama City Beach to go through SDV training, and then to my team a short while later.
You seem to always end up at least in good spots. Pensacola is not the worst place to be. From Coronado to Pensacola, I assume that there are, you could have been in Roanoke, Virginia, for crying out loud. But as you go forward in this process, are you starting to feel the sense of validation that you wanted from being a SEAL?
No.
Why?
I think there are always parts of the community or people that are doing more work, and are closer to the fight and more intense fight and maybe having more consequence or more effects in the battle space. And so that was always, as a young SEAL, that was always the game. It's like, I want to be tested and I want to do stuff that matters and I want to be in the mix. And so it didn't feel like that was scratched on that first deployment. I felt like we got to see a few things and did a few operations and certainly, it was not without its danger, but it didn't scratch the itch, no question.
So is this next job as an SBT going to give you, or does it give you the itch scratch that you needed?
Yeah. So at the time, the SDV guys, because there weren't a lot of national level missions coming down for the SDV teams, they were getting to augment and deploy going over to Afghanistan, and the West Coast teams weren't really getting into Afghanistan at the time. And so I viewed this as an opportunity. Well, I'll go do this. I'll go learn a new skill set. I'll get a different, perspective and vantage point, but more than likely this is going to put me in Afghanistan and doing work there. And that seemed to be interesting and exciting to me. I didn't want to find myself in a position, a year and a half later, being back in Iraq doing PSD. It wasn't what I wanted to be doing. And so yeah, I think.
Does it work out? Do you end up in Afghanistan?
No, it did not work out as planned. Actually took it never does. Yeah, sometimes it seems the harder you work or the more you run on the hamster wheel, the faster you don't go to where you want. But I started to do an OIC, took over as a platoon and started working. And then we got about 5 months into the workup, and another officer showed up to the team, had some hardship on the West Coast. They moved him over to our team, and he had previous SDV experience and he was senior to me. So they put him in the platoon and he took over as an OIC. And then they had another platoon they wanted me to take over. So I got pulled out of that one. And so I had about 6 months time before this new platoon was going to start. But it ended up being a really awesome opportunity. I got to go do some special activities work in and around the Horn of Africa. And at the time I went over to, I was working in and around Kenya and Somalia and doing some different things there. Again, saw the battle space from a completely different vantage point, different side of the global war on terror, outside of the traditional combat theaters, and it was fascinating. It's something that I wasn't aware existed or that was happening, but it was really good to see that and to be a part of it. And yeah, I was grateful for that experience. So it was a nice way to. It was almost the perfect way to kill time, I guess, before starting that next OIC role. But yeah.
So the next OIC role you get, is that end up in another combat deployment for you?
It does not. We did our full workup, all of our training, everything, And the cool thing about the SCV teams is that you do the traditional workup that the normal SEALs do, but you do a lot of specialized work on sniper reconnaissance, a little bit more of sensitive operations training, and then obviously a ton of diving with the SCVs. And so great experience, great workup. That platoon that I was with, some of just the best people in the world. I mean, I guess everyone would say that about most of their platoons that they've been in, but I wouldn't trade that experience for anything. The downside of it was as we were finishing our workup, the team got disbanded. So they actually shut down SDV Team 2, and they said, we're doing some realignment of forces. We're going to consolidate SDV operations in Hawaii and just have SDV Team 1. And everyone, we're not going to deploy you all as platoons. We're just going to scatter shot your guys across, various operational areas, and that was it. And so I was kind of like the last person standing in a game of musical chairs, and I got sent to Balad to be the Siege of Sodef night jock director for about 7 months. And it was
this.
What's that?
What time frame was this?
This would have been in 2000. Let's see, 2008. I want to say.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I was in
2008.
I was between Baghdad. I made convoys between Baghdad and Balad in 05 and 06, so I didn't know if I might have been a ship passing in the night with you, but Balad wasn't bad either. Wasn't terrible.
I mean, look, I mean, I worked 12 hours in the jock, and then I'd have 12 hours off, and it was one of these things that, again, I try to figure out like what's the best, how am I going to get the most out of this experience? And so when I went over, it was the holidays, so it was around Christmas time, or maybe even Thanksgiving and Christmas. And the deal, everyone sends all their junk food and cookies and candy, it's just everywhere. And so I was like, all right, when I land here and I started seeing that, I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to go the exact opposite. All I'm going to eat is raw vegetables, clean meats, and I'm just going to train as hard as I possibly can during my off hours. And so I think I was doing like 2-a-days or 3-a-days and just eating a ton of like good food. And I think I came out of that deployment, like, I don't know, 4%, 5% body fat. I mean, I'd never been, I was just a machine.
That was my second deployment. I was doing 3 days nonstop. I was just out of pure boredom.
Yeah, that's
it. For the closeout in Iraq in 2011, and there was literally no kinetic operations, next to none.
Yeah.
So we all just went there to leave. Like I literally told my whole unit, I'm like, guys, just understand here. We're going here to leave. Like we're the last rotation. We're going here to leave. And I was like, really? Yeah, that makes sense. We are going. So it's all 3 days was common, just out of pure boredom.
Yeah. You kill time, and hopefully you kill time in productive ways. I mean, you can play Call of Duty, or you can train, or whatever the thing is. But so it was not my favorite deployment. Met some great people, and life in the jock is pretty mundane. Not a whole lot of excitement there. But it was made some great contacts in the Army, and just saw how different things worked, and how the joint. Really the joint team worked to, effectively support all the operators deployed across the country. So that was great. But again, that's me trying to put a silver lining on it. I just wanted to be in combat, and I wasn't.
Yeah. And I mean, reading through your profile, you kind of get a shaft job again. You have to go be an aide de camp after this, right?
Well, I'll do you one better. So the one thing that kept me going on that deployment was I'd been picked up to screen and go through an assessment for another tactical leadership, role on a combat tactical leadership role at a different team. And that was what had always been my focus, what I was excited about. And I said, all right, well, I'm going to go do this night jock director thing for 7 months. I'll, get the most out of it that I can. And when I come back, at least I know that I'm going to do this screening and go through that. And so came back, went through a selection and assessment, and I was, I think I was 2 weeks into the assessment when I got pulled out of training on a Friday, and the director of training said, I don't know how to tell you this, but this has never happened before, but the Admiral of Warcom, the SEAL leader of the community, has decided that he wants an officer going through selection, a junior officer going through selection, to go be an aide de camp down in Fort Bragg. And because you're the junior person, you're junior by, I think, a year, junior person in this class, it's fallen to you. You're going to be the one that's going to go do this aide de camp position. So I went to SDV team. I went to the SDV team because I wanted to go into the selection. I got this deal to Balad, and the whole thing that kept me going was like, well, I know I'm at least going to get through this selection or go to that. And that's going to be the thing for me. So I get pulled out. The next day I find myself down in Fort Bragg, North Carolina at JSOC. I'm one of one interviewing for a position, aide de camp. And I meet with a general, a phenomenal leader, a gentleman named General Joe Votel. And I meet with him and we have our meeting. And at the end, he's like, well, is there anything else you want to tell me? I said, well, I'll be honest, like, this is the last thing that I want to do. I really don't want this job. But if you pick me up, I walked him through like my path and what I was trying to do. I said, but if you select me as this one of one interviewing for this position, I'll do a great job. And the only thing that I ask is that you bring me along to everything. So keep me in all the meetings. And I really want to use this as an opportunity to just learn and not carry your bags, but actually learn what's going on. And he was gracious and did that and did that in spades. And it ended up being another phenomenal learning opportunity, albeit not the combat leadership roles that I was looking for, but just a phenomenal opportunity to see the entire span of JSOC, what all the units were doing. We had Admiral McCraven at the time was leading JSOC, and he would typically plant his flag inside Afghanistan. And then General Votel would cover down on all the other theaters or anywhere else where we were doing operations. And so we were flying nonstop. We were gone probably 95% of the time, flying to these various, places where we had personnel deployed and meeting with them and meeting with senior leaders. And so it was a great experience, but yeah. Try to make
okay. So, I mean, I'm just wondering, you're making the best out of every situation, but clearly this isn't what you thought you were going to be when you became a SEAL.
Yeah.
Like, in the back of your mind, are you having private conversation with yourself or even, conversation with friends? Like, man, this isn't what I thought it was going to be at all.
Yeah. I mean, I was
like, I know you keep your mouth shut, right? And you do what's expected of you. Like that's the professionalism that the job requires. But that doesn't mean you're not allowed to have an opinion. That doesn't mean you're not allowed to have human emotions and be like, this sucks. It's not what I thought it was at all. I mean, ask anybody who's been divorced. Yeah, that's not what I thought it was going to be at all. That's why you're divorced. So I'm just wondering where your mindset is. Yeah,
I mean, I think there's no question. I mean, that was there. But I tried to scope those moments where they were really intense, like, WTF, like what's going on here? And I would sit in that space for a little bit, and then I would just kind of shift my orientation. Say, all right, what is next? What can I do? Like recognizing that, crying over spilled milk or ruminating on, what could have been or what should be just wasn't going to serve me well. I was still in the teams and in the community, and I was still front side focused on, hey, I'm going to get back into this, back to ultimately where I want to be. And there was still a path to that. And I knew that guys were still doing work, and I was just trying to make sure that I was, learning as much as I could and getting as much as I could from the experience, so that when I eventually got to where I wanted to be, I was going to be an asset again and not a liability. So but I will say, it's funny. I got down to Fort Bragg, and I was a little bit, I was in a weird headspace, and I was saying like, all right, I'm so sick of training, but I need to do something. And I said, all right, my new thing here is like, I'm going to find some new physical thing to train in. And I said, all right, well, what's the thing that I hate more than anything else? And maybe part of this was like, I just needed to suffer to some degree, but what's the one thing I hate more than anything else? And the thing that came up for me was like, oh yeah, bear crawling. Like next to being cold and wet, maybe bear crawling is the thing that I hate more than anything else. And so I decided that I was going to start just working on my bear crawl. And my thing, I was like, what's a good distance? Well, a mile is a good distance. So anytime we were back in Fort Bragg, I was out at the track there, and I was trying to get my mile bear crawl time down to under 30 minutes. I was never able to do it. I think like 35 minutes was, the closest I got. But, again, I was just trying to like be in this headspace, like, how can I make the best of this situation? How can I do something a little bit different? And, anyways.
I'm trying to envision right now bear crawling around a 1/4 mile track at times.
You get some strange looks.
But I'm also trying to envision how bad that's going to suck. Like you think like when you bear crawl, like you do it for like, 10 to 12 seconds, right? And you're like, oh, that's probably got to be like what, 30, 40 yards. No, it's like 10. you know, and I'm just sitting here going in my head. I'm just like trying to compute the whole thing going, yeah, 35 minutes. That sounds like it sucks. A lot of it sounds like it sucks a lot. So anyway, my mind just went there. So after you finish this time with the general and you do this aide de camp thing, where are you with Headspace? And I mean, it's about that time where you're deciding that you're either going to stay in or get out, right?
Yeah, that's it. And I never envisioned myself as a career military person. Not even
really?
Not even when I was at the academy or, any point in training. It was always, I'm going to do this for as long as I'm having a blast and I'm loving it. And then I won't do it anymore. But I was never dead set on, hey, I'm going to do this for 20 years or 30 years. I knew at some point I wanted to have a family, and I wanted to be around for them. And, and so that was always in the back of my mind, that there was a little bit of pull there. I had so many friends that, and you look across the community, and I'm sure, in the people that you serve with as well, but everyone's divorced, right? It's like, you just see it's just the name of the game, and it's very hard to have a family, be present. For me, I didn't even have any long-term girlfriends. My girlfriend was, the teams, and it was like work hard, play hard, and focus on that. But so it was in the back of my mind. But coming off of that aide job, I knew that I was going right back into selection again. So I was going back into the same selection and assessment program that I'd been pulled out of the last time. So finished the aide job, show up, and 2 weeks later, I was going back through this selection. And now this time I was 2 weeks in. At the end of the second week, I got dropped. I just couldn't keep up. The first part of selection is the CQC, and just wasn't keeping up in the house for whatever reason. I just couldn't get it done. And that, I would say, that was crushing. So, I here again, I felt like I'd been running on this hamster wheel as hard and as fast as I could to get to where I want to go. And I seemingly not making any progress, and ultimately getting, what I wanted. So I pulled out of selection, or dropped from selection this time. And the leadership at the command, I don't think they had done this by this point, or had ever done this before, but they said, hey, look, we recognize that maybe we didn't set you up for success, whether, going around with the general for a year and not really spending much time on the gun, or, in kill houses, or doing training, whatever the reason. They just said, hey, we want to give you another shot. So what we'd like for you to do is hang around for a year, and then you'll go back into selection and training the following year. And now this time you can get set up. You'll have some more time to, bed with the teams and go out and spend some more time shooting. So I told them that I would stay at the command, and then I would make a decision a little bit later on. I just wasn't in that headspace where I could say, all right, I'm ready to commit to this yet. So stayed there, ended up deploying a couple of times to the Arabian Peninsula, doing some work over there. Good deployments. Again, another good vantage point, not the combat deployments I was looking for, but we were doing some important work and some interesting and different work. And so I really enjoyed that experience and the people that I worked alongside. And then it came time to start selection again. And at that point, I made the decision that I was ready to transition out. Didn't start, decided that, again, I knew I wanted to have a family. I wanted to have kids. And I just thought, this is the right time to transition. And so that was.
Anybody try to talk you into staying?
Oh yeah. And I don't know. It's weird even thinking about it now. It's like, did I make the right decision? Was it, what was really going on there, and why did I make the decision I made? Like, why not just go back through selection again and give it one more crack? But at this point, I was starting to look out, 4, 5, 8 years. Where do I want to be? And feeling this pressure that I was running out of time if I was ever going to meet someone, start a family, get this next phase of life set up. If I knew I didn't want to stay in for 20 plus years. One of the benefits of being with that general was that I was able to see what everyone was doing at all levels of the military, and going to a number of retirements and seeing all that. And I don't know that the work lost its allure a little bit, but I just started to get excited about some other things. So made the decision to transition out. I think ultimately what it came down to was, I thought about, hey, what is it that I like about this job? I love diving and shooting and jumping and demolitions. I love the guys I work alongside and, all this stuff, but what are the things that I love most? And it wasn't really any of the adrenaline, attributes of the job or the things that people deem as sexy. It was really, I love working with a small group of committed individuals on big missions and having big effects. And that's what I love most. And I started to realize that I didn't necessarily have to be in the teams to do that there were that I could do that outside of the military. And so that became my new front side focus, is all right, I need to change out my tool set. I need to figure out what I want to do next. But ultimately I'm still going to come back to work with a small group of individuals committed on a big mission that I care about. So.
And somehow you end up in grad school. Was this a sort of happenstance thing, or what was the plan? And did you know what you wanted to do as soon as you said, "Hey, I'm done being a SEAL"?
Yeah. So, that last year in the teams, I applied to a couple of schools. I said, all right, I want to at least open some doors and have some options. So I'm not just choosing one option because that's all I had. So I was going through on these deployments. I was studying for the GMATs. I was going through applications and doing all of that. And right before the month before I made the call to get out, I got word back from the two schools that I applied to that I didn't get accepted. No interviews, no nothing. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And so I was, again, it was that was a hard pill to swallow, but it made me even though I made the decision, or the fact that I made the decision to transition out, even not having another option at that point, just made me realize that, I was ultimately making the right call. So when I got out, the focus was again, hey, let's find a way to get into a top business school. And so I started working on that. The crazy thing is, one of my last deployments over to the Arabian Peninsula, I was with that AOIC that I was first paired up with at SEAL Team 7. And he and I became best friends in the teams, followed each other along at various points in our time in service. And we were together again on that final deployment. I was actually living with he and his wife my last couple months in Virginia. So I'd sold my place. And I dropped him off for his deployment, a couple weeks before I got out. Took him to the command to fly out. A month after getting out, I got a call at midnight one night. My buddy Grady called and said, "Hey, do you have the keys to Jonas's place?" And I didn't think anything of it. I was like, said, "No, it's it's stashed here." I figured he wanted to use it for whatever, like late night rendezvous or whatever. And the next morning, I get a text from someone, and it's a link to an article about a helicopter had been shot down in Afghanistan. And right away, I knew where it was, who the helicopter was, and I knew that was Jonas's that was Jonas's troop. And so that whole day, found out that we had lost Extortion 17. Obviously, we lost an entire troop. I think single largest loss of U.S. service members' lives in Afghanistan, maybe even to date. I think we lost 30 service members at one point. And I immediately flew back out to Virginia Beach and went back to Jonas's place. The beers that I had bought for him to drink, on getting back from his deployment, were still in the fridge. I was there with his wife and went to a whole bunch of funerals over the course of the next, month. Was working with the command to help some of the families get, fill some of their immediate needs. And, it was a really strange headspace to be in, to really, when I left the military, I wanted to be as far as humanly possible away from the military as I could be. I didn't want to, I was still dealing with a lot of the emotions around not achieving what I wanted to achieve while I was in. And I wanted to be as far away as possible. And so a month out, all these guys die. My best friend gets killed, back in the command, back going to all these funerals, back with the families. And it puts you in this weird headspace to thinking, well, did I make the right decision? Did I leave for selfish reasons? Do I need to come back in? Do I need to avenge someone's death? What's the right thing to do here? So strange way to transition out.
I mean, was there a moment there where after Josh had passed where you were like, no, now I need to stay. I need to continue on. Was there any sort of that emotional pull?
Yeah. So Jonas,
Jonas, sorry.
No, all good. So, Jonas and I talked about talked about this before I took him, that last night, before I dropped him off for that deployment. it was kind of wild when we were on that final deployment together one night. He kind of broke down and he said, man, I'm so upset. I'm like, what's going on? He said, all I want to do is stay at home and have kids and just be with my wife. And I just don't want to deploy again. And I said, well, you're going to get to do that. You go on this deployment, you come back and you'll be fine. He said, no, he's like, I keep having this dream that my helicopter is going to get shot down in this next deployment. And so that's ridiculous.
Oh
that's
my.
not going to happen. But he was convinced. He's like, no, I keep having this dream. He's like, I'm pretty certain that this is going to happen. And so that night before I dropped him off on that final deployment, I asked him, I said, what do you want me to do if you die in this deployment? Like, do you want me to come in? Do you go back into the teams? Like, what does he want? He said, no, just, look after my family, make sure my family's, cared for, my wife, and that's it. And so we exchanged, I think, maybe one or two emails that first month of his deployment, and then he was dead.
Wow, that is crazy that he was having those dreams. Like, that's.
Yeah, it's it's wild.
It hits home.
I don't know what to make of it.
No, it's wow. So sorry. All right. So I try to transition here, but you're out. You're headed to grad school. Okay.
Actually, but before grad school, I just needed some time to decompress. I ended up going out to Indonesia.
Oh, really?
Surf trip. Yeah, with a guy that was still in. We went out for 2 weeks. Spent 2 weeks in Indo surfing, and then while we were there, one of the guests, we're on this like the Mentawais, the Mentawai Islands. We're on this one island, super remote in West Sumatra. I think West Sumatra. And one of the guests that was also there, I think they had like 10 guests at a time, cut his foot up on a reef. And I always travel with sutures, and we get the basic like combat casualty care training. And so I stitched his foot up, and then the owner of the camp was like, hey, would you mind staying to the end of the season? We could use someone that could help with some basic medical stuff and help, guide surfers and whatnot. I was like, I don't have anything going on. Sure. That sounds great. And I was actually I'd gotten picked up for this Goldman Sachs internship, pre-MBA internship thing. And Goldman Sachs, they notified me while I was out there that you got picked up for this. And they reached out and they're like, all right, we need you, in New York in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And I was like looking at, I can go to New York and Goldman Sachs in 3 weeks, or I can stay here for the next, 3 months surfing. And I was like, well, Goldman, this is not going to work out. I need to stay here in Indo. So I ended up doing that time in Indonesia. It was great, super cathartic, really good for me. Got it. I felt like I got in a really great headspace, and then came back and then jumped into business school. So.
Wow. It takes guts. Right.
Yeah. I don't know if it was the right, I don't regret the decision. I'm sure I missed out on the Goldman side of things, but I needed a time away. It was good for me.
Gotcha. Do you know what you want to do when you go to business school? Like, do you have this plan laid out, or are you just kind of going for the sake of going?
No, I thought, hey, this is going to be a good experience. Again, like I'll learn a new skill set. I will, I felt like ultimately I wanted to start my own thing. I just didn't know what that was. So I had this idea that I want to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't know what I was going to do or what that was going to be. And so just kind of went in. And for me, people go into business school for a lot of different reasons. Some people are going to party for 2 years. Some people are going to, just get some downtime or transition or whatever. For me, I was like, I'm going to try to focus as much on the academics as possible and learn as much as I can. And again, like nothing really comes easy to me. So I had to work really hard in the classroom to stay up. But yeah, that was my focus. And over the 2 years that I was there, got exposed to a lot of different things. I would say one thing that was an incredibly valuable asset for me, and I didn't realize this at the time or going in, was how much I needed other veterans around. So Wharton, very pro veteran. I had a few other SEALs in my class, number of special operations personnel, people from across the military, from the Australian SAS, and being able to sit in a classroom and have a conversation, or teachers teaching something, and being able to look and make eye contact with another person that gets it, and just say like, all right, like it was massive. It was everything for me. So had a great experience, in business school, interned at Google while I was there. over that summer, not because I necessarily wanted to go to Google, but absent knowing what I wanted to do, it was the only interview that I did, and was, got a slot to do the internship there. So I did that. And that was my experience.
How does the Pat Tillman Scholar thing come about?
I applied for that. Someone reached out to me, a fellow SEAL named Cy, who was also a Tillman Scholar, reached out and said, "Hey, you might want to check this out. This is super interesting." And so I put in an application as I was going through the business school application process, had a few calls with them, and then found out that I got picked up for that. And so, even before going to business school, I actually had every Tillman Scholar class they bring together in person, and had a chance to connect with this community and for a few days. And it was awesome. It was so great, and continue to stay involved in that community. But
That's amazing. It's not easy to be a Tillman Scholar. There's a lot of very specific circumstances that they're looking for. And it has nothing to do with you being a SEAL. It's veterans across the board. But it's just a very unique individual that they're trying to find to keep Pat's memory alive and be in the embodiment of Pat. Like, that's the big thing about it too, right?
Yeah.
And so when you find that out that you're a Tillman Scholar, like, is there an emotional component of that to you?
Absolutely. I mean, Pat was someone that I always looked up to. I mean, you look at someone that seemingly from the outside has everything and has a very, I won't say easy path, but at least a very certain path in front of them that's going to afford them, tremendous wealth and opportunity. To see them give that all up to enlist in the Army is, I don't know, there's something about that is so powerful. And to know just how much service meant to Pat, and that he wasn't going to play by anyone else's rules, that Pat was going to do what he thought was right, that he was internally motivated to do the right thing was awesome. And it just, for me, at the academy and watching what Pat did, watching him go into service, it was always something that was so inspirational to me, and served as a great example. I think he sets an amazing example for a lot of people. So to find myself in a position where I'm in some way affiliated with Pat and his legacy, and helping to keep that legacy alive was a tremendous honor.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, this is one of the things I always found the most amazing is that, Pat's first deployment wasn't to Afghanistan where he was killed. His first deployment was actually to Iraq. And after that deployment, he had a clause in his contract that he could be let out of the military after one deployment. And they approached him, and he actually had offers from NFL teams to go back to the NFL. And, the Army even said, "Listen, if you want to go, man, go." And Pat said, "No, I signed up for 3 years. I'm going to do 3 years, and that's going to be the end of it." And so it ultimately ended up losing his life on his next deployment to Afghanistan. But he had every right to walk away after one deployment and said, "Nope, I'm doing 3 years, and that's what I signed up to do." And that's kind of, the embodiment of Pat. He was going to do it his way, but he also, had a certain amount of respect for any commitment that he made, right? Like, to follow it through all the way through to the end and see it through all the way to the end. And there was a greater purpose in all those commitments. It wasn't just about the commitment itself. It all fed into a bigger, grander picture for him personally, but just, that's also what the Tillman Scholarship is about, that what you're doing now is feeding into a bigger, grander purpose because of the commitment they've made to you and you've made to them.
That's it.
Yeah. So, all right. You get out of business school, and now you're officially smart because Wharton told you so. You end up getting a job at Google, right?
Yeah, I ended up getting a job at Google. Well, I received an offer to go back to Google after doing my internship. And I think, the transition is hard for anyone. I don't care if you're in for 2 years or 10 years or 20 years, leaving the military is it's not easy. And I think for me, I essentially grown up in the military. So from the time I was 18 to the time I was, almost 30, the military is what I knew, whether it was at the academy or in the teams or in training. Like, that was my family, my community, it was everything that I had known. And when I left that, I put a lot of pressure on myself to make sure that what I did next was, I wanted to have as much of visceral connection to, and that it had to matter. It had to have some purpose, it had to have meaning. And coming off of that internship, and I got this offer to go back to Google, I couldn't make it make sense to to see how I was, what I was doing at Google and, customer service and operations, like how that mattered and why I just didn't care about it. I didn't feel connected to it. And I was like, yeah, it's a great company and you can live well there and be comfortable and all of those things that people want. But for me, at that moment in time, I just said, I need something more. Like there's got to be something else going on. And so I turned down the offer to go back to Google without really having another opportunity at the time. And over Christmas break, I was born and raised in Texas. I was back in Texas and I was talking to a few people, and one friend in particular who had started an energy company and done really well. And he said, we're not hiring, but if you want to come work with my executive team, be a really good experience. You'll get to see things from a different vantage point, and might be worth your time. And so, I think, I took it because it seemed to be this amazing opportunity that, people would kill for. And I think part of being a SEAL or, in the military or special operations is that you're always seeking to optimize. You want to do the hardest, the best, whatever the thing is that is, whatever is, non-traditional or just the best, that's what you want to be doing. And so I took the job and really in the blind, not knowing what I was going to be doing. And remember, I showed up on day one and I met with, I was paired up with his group CFO, and I met with the CFO, and this is like $100 billion company. They had a few portfolio companies, so big company, but small executive team. And so I met with the CFO, and his CFO said, okay, well, send you downstairs and I'm going to send you a model and I'm going to send you some contracts and just, immerse in that. So I said, all right. So I went downstairs and sitting in this chair that's, a little bit uncomfortable. And I've got this buttoned up shirt and sitting in front of this, Windows computer, and he sends me this model that's got like 27 sheets and all these different things. I have no idea what's going on. And someone drops off like 5,000 pages of contracts all around this LNG export terminal down on the Gulf Coast. And I start flipping through these things and I almost start like breaking out in hives. Like, I hate Excel. I don't like sitting in it. I don't like, legal contracts. And I'm like reading through these things, trying to make sense of all this, and nothing about it felt right. Again, coming back to this sense of like, I need to do something that I feel connected to, that I feel inspired by, that is meaningful and, measurable to me. And I just knew, man, this isn't it. Like, I made a grave error. And my takeaway from that was like, just because you're presented with an amazing opportunity doesn't mean it's the right opportunity for you. And so you've got to do some diligence there. And I hadn't done that diligence. So the next day I went in, I sat down with the CFO. I said, look, I think I've made a tremendous error. And before we get any further, I don't want to do you all a disservice. I certainly don't want to take a salary if I don't think I'm going to do a good job here, if I'm going to add value. And I think I've made a mistake. He convinced me to stay and said, this is just part of the onboarding phase. Like, trust me, this is going to get better. And so I agreed. I said, all right, well, I'll stay a little bit. And I agreed I made this commitment to myself that I'd stay in this position for a year. I felt like I owed it to the gentleman that offered me the job. And about 6 months in, Google reached back out. They're putting together a different team and said, hey, if you want to come back, we've got something new and different, and we think you'd be interested in it. And I decided to make the jump after the year with the energy company. So,
and the jump then leads to branching out on your own, right?
That's it. Yeah. So I spent almost 3 years with Google, and obviously got a lot of good experience there and got to see a lot of different things. But I still had this pull. I know I wanted to work on something that I cared about that was more entrepreneurial. And those last 6 months at Google, I started just doing a lot of research outside of my work time and started working on some different ideas, and ultimately settled on an idea with a friend that we wanted to work on. And I left Google to work on it full time. So it was the startup that was almost 4.5 years ago, and still working on it today.
And the company is called Madefor, and you're wearing the logo on the hat. If you're watching this pod on YouTube or on the Killcliff app. Yeah, by the way, that looks like a golf-like logo. Like, I feel like you should be golfing. like the perfect logo for a golfer to wear on their chest or on their hat. But anyway.
If there are any golfers listening, get on our website, buy some hats and wear them.
Fantastic. For sponsorships all around. No, so Madefor, your friend Blake Mykoski, right? Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Blake Mykoski. Yeah.
Blake Mykoski, you guys start this thing up. Like, so how do you come up with the idea? What's the premise, and what do you want to accomplish with it?
Yeah. So, it was interesting when I was going through business school. One of the classes that I took wasn't actually a part of the business school program. I audited an undergraduate class. So I was already the old dude going through business school. I was the really old dude sitting in like this class of freshmen and sophomores sitting in the back of the class. But it was taught by this woman, Angela Duckworth, and the class was an introduction to the field of positive psychology. So I'm someone that I don't like soft things. I don't like guru things. I'm not into fads. And I just all right, what's going on here and what's effective and what works. And that gets me excited. But that whole field I found particularly interesting. Basically what they said is in anything that you do from a health standpoint, whether it's behavioral, physical, mental health, there are really two sides to the equation. One side is focusing on harm reduction and minimizing downside risks, stopping bad behaviors, or what are the things that you have to stop doing. But the other side of the equation is what are the things you can be in pursuit of, actions that you can take, or habits you can cultivate, or mindsets that you can foster that bring out the best in you, that work in line with the way that your brain and body are designed. And a lot of what they talked about in that class and what had been proven out through evidence-based research and the studies that were being done mapped to my experience in the teams and what I saw people lean into that were really resilient and did a great job in the community. And that for me was, again, it planted this little seed of there's something interesting there. I might like to work on something like that someday. I'd always been interested in this idea of human potential and how we can get the most with what we've been given. And so again, I just kept researching and reading and chipping away at this. And then Blake and I came together and decided, hey, it'd be cool to work on something where we help people be better. Just can we give people the information and the tools and maybe the action steps to figure out how to get the most and unlock the potential that they have within inside themselves. So that was really the mission. We kind of jumped all in with that mission, but didn't know necessarily how we were going to build this offering or what it was going to be. And very early on, I brought on a gentleman named Dr. Andrew Huberman. He's a neuroscientist out of Stanford. He's since become very popular over the last year with the Huberman Lab podcast, but brought Andrew in and said, hey, let's work together and let's figure this out. He studies neuroplasticity and how you can create changes in the brain that last over the entire course of your life. And you think about, hey, I can change the brain, then that means I can change my mindset, I can change my behaviors, I can change whatever it is that I'm trying to change. And so brought Andrew in, brought a whole bunch of really smart people, John Rady and Ruth Benka and Samar Hattar from Harvard and Stanford and National Institute of Mental Health to help us design this program of that would become Madefor. And so that's how we did.
So basically, I mean, again, you talk about the neuroscience behind it, but I try to boil it down, bottom line up front. It's just about getting your brain to work in ways that you haven't been able to do before to create better outcomes for yourself. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's it. Well, I think maybe it's being here in Los Angeles or Southern California, but if you look in health and wellness space, there's so much BS out there. There's so much marketing and hype and things that get pushed to people that are just frankly a waste of money. And so I wanted to come into this, work on something that would really give people greater agency, a greater level of control, and help get them into action in ways that made a difference. And so, but yeah, that's what it is. And so we looked at all of the things that were out there across the human performance area and started just pressure testing them with research and what does the science say, and ultimately narrowed it down to 10 things. And these things are very simple. So things like hydration and movement and gratitude and rest and exposure to nature and social connection and nutrition, breath, all things that we intuitively know are good for us, but maybe we've skipped over them in pursuit of other things that maybe are sexy or high speed or promise a quick fix. And so we took all of these things and basically designed a program around them. So we deliver the science, we make it really interesting with these stories that we tell, and then we map it to what's the smallest thing that I can get you to focus your attention and effort on, one thing at a time, that if you do it, engage it in a certain way, it's actually going to make you reflexively show up better in your life. So you can be working on hydration, but in working on hydration, you actually find that, well, I'm a better parent, or I'm a better, teammate, or I'm just more present and attuned to everything that I'm doing. So that's a little bit of, what's going on with the program.
The hydration thing is interesting because I feel like it would make me a worse parent because I'd be in the can every 25 minutes. I try to do that gallon of water thing in a day. It's like, hey, where's Mark? Oh, he's in the bathroom again. No, but I mean, look, I'm scrolling through the website. I'm kind of hooked. I mean, the idea of it, and it's getmadefor.com, just the 3 words, get made and FOR, getmadefor.com. And a lot of it, I don't want to, I guess, simplify your company, but a lot of it seems like stuff that people genuinely know, but it's just, there's some fine tuning to it that makes it a little bit of a better result, so to speak.
That's it. Yeah. I think these are things that you intuitively know they're good for you. Maybe your grandparents told you to do them, but again, for one reason or another, you don't do them, or maybe there's a lot more that you could be doing there. If you changed, with a little bit more information, you can get a lot more out of these practices. And so the goal of Madefor is not that you get through the end of this program and you've got, 10 things that you have to do every day to like live your best life. Really, the goal is, can you make your best self your reflexive self? So you're not having to like work hard and think about checklists, but rather that, we help you change your habits, change your mindset so that your life changes in a way that, is best for you. And recognizing like, it's not a one size fits all approach. There's not like one way to better living. Everyone's got your own unique path to wellness or to unlocking their potential. But we've worked with, over 10,000 people to date all across the country. And it's super effective. Like our small, simple steps. And again, these aren't big lifts. These are just a couple of minutes every day of something that you engage. But they stack up in really powerful and effective ways. And so, yeah.
What's the biggest thing that you took from being a SEAL, or whether it was from Buds, that has transitioned you into this organization Madefor that has helped you be successful?
I think it's having a mission-focused mindset. I just, one, understanding what the mission is and making sure that you feel connected and inspired by the mission. That helps you navigate the challenges and the headwinds that come up, but also identify opportunities of where, you can leverage the team, or you can leverage whatever may come your way to help you move closer towards achieving that mission set. Oftentimes, I think people talk about SEALs and they focus on the wrong things, like, oh, that person can run forever. They can do a lot of pull-ups or, whatever, they're great shots. But I think ultimately what SEALs do a really good job of is they find ways to be effective no matter the environment that they find themselves in. And so it doesn't matter if it's in the air or the water, jungle, urban, out of an embassy, you get it dropped down into a new environment and you figure out, all right, what is it that I care? What am I trying to achieve? And start pulling things and messing with levers to figure out, how do I have the effects that I want to have so that I can ultimately achieve what I want. That I think has helped me, in working with Madefor and ultimately, getting to this point. So
again, getmadefor.com. I'm not even joking around. I'm genuinely curious as to what all this is as I scroll through the website as we're doing this here. And the 10 components that you have of it. I mean, again, that's one. I feel like, hey, it's for me, it would be like one of those slap upside the head things. Hey, stupid, you know this stuff already. But when you concentrate it and you put it all together, it's almost like, to use your psychology terms, like Gestalt philosophy, the sum of the parts is greater than the whole.
That's it. And it's, Andrew Huberman talks about, you can change your brain over the entire course of your life, but past the age of 25, there's really only 2 models of brain change. One is through a short, intense experience, positive or negative, car accident, combat, sex, getting married, birth of a child, whatever that may be. The other way, though, is through small, consistent actions done with awareness of like cause and effect of what you're doing and what is the effect that it's having on you. And so that's the model that Madefor is built on. And frankly, the peak experiences are great, but they're the exception. They're not, most of life is lived off the mountaintop. And so that's where we focus our time. And it's been fun to do. And I would say, for anyone that's listening, that's a military veteran, whether you're a veteran or you're active duty or you're a military dependent, Madefor is now free for our community. So you can find there's a link, there's a military link on the website on the homepage. If you want to do it, you can sign up, and we made it free for all. For the military community. That was something that, the first opportunity that we had to do that, I wanted to. It was important to me to be able to give back and serve a community that I feel obviously serves the rest of us, but it has shaped my life in such a meaningful and impactful way.
All right. I mean, you got me, especially as you can give me free anything. I'll take it. You got a new customer. What is the thing about the teams you miss the most now that you've been gone for 5 years plus now? People,
hands down. I think, 2 things. The people, and the consequence of action. So this idea that everything that we're doing, there's a great consequence to it. So whether you're in combat or you're in training, like everything just has a certain gravity to it that it's hard to recreate on the outside.
What is something that you wish you did more of during the SEAL team time that you didn't get a chance to do when you look back on it?
This is probably something that I just fall victim to in general, but just savor and enjoy the time more. I'm always so focused on like, what's the next thing? What's like, what I need to be working on next. And this kind of ever optimizing. And I feel that sometimes comes at a cost where you don't recognize and savor like all the awesome stuff that's going on here now. So I wish I'd done that a little bit more. And yeah.
Does Madefor scratch that itch that you didn't get a chance to scratch enough in combat?
Madefor is not combat, no question. But what I would say is that we have a mission, and the mission matters. And it's been fun to see the effects that we've had on people. And I do calls with our members a couple times a month, and with our advisors, and just seeing how we can show up for someone and get someone to do something small that again changes the trajectory of their life in some way is awesome. And it's important and it matters. And I think, especially now over the course last couple of years where people have been maybe under an increased level of stress, it's been really awesome to give people a little bit more conviction and certainty that, that they've got more power than they thought that they had. So that's been awesome.
Because you mentioned him before, I just thumbed through on your website the practical joke that Jonas had played on you in Iraq. Would you mind sharing it with the audience? Yeah.
So Jonas and I on our first deployment, we were cellmates together, and we were obviously working during the time we were doing our direct action stuff. We were working at night and sleeping during the day. And so because you never want to leave your trailer during the day, the sun was so bright, we just keep water bottles next to our beds, and you piss in your water bottle at night.
Oh yeah.
During the day, so you never have to leave. And everyone knows this. And so Jonas, ever the practical jokester, thought it would be funny. Well, one night I wake up, I got to pee and start peeing in my water bottle. I notice like I'm not quite, the alignment's off. Something's going wrong, and I'm like splashing everywhere. I'm like, what's going on? And start shaking this water bottle, trying to figure it out. And I just hear Jonas in the corner of the hut, just like giggling, just can't stop laughing, and turn on the light. And Jonas thought it'd be funny to just poke holes all throughout the bottom of my water bottle. So the more I shook it, the more I tried to line up, the more pee went everywhere. And Jonas thought that was funny, and I'm still plotting my revenge on him. I'll get
that is outstanding. That is a great prank. I had never thought of that, but yeah, for any of us, even for those of us who were sleeping at night, I just didn't want to walk 75 yards to the bathroom when I had to pee. So I just peed in the water bottle and threw it out in the morning. So I get it, man. That's an all-time good prank. I can't believe no one ever thought of that before. That is outstanding. But tip of the cap to Jonas, obviously. With all of that you went through and losing Jonas and things of that nature, how much of that still stays with you every day?
Well, one of the silver linings of that whole story is I ended up meeting and through, during the services and post services, kind of meeting Jonas's family and getting close with them, and then developed a friendship with Jonas's sister. And a couple years later, we got married. And so I'm married to Jonas's sister now. We've got 3 kids, twin girls, Rebel and Sailor, 2.5, and Rowdy is 9 months old. And so there's not a day that goes by that I don't think of Jonas. We've got teddy bears made up for all the kids out of his old uniforms. We've got his picture on the wall, and they're always looking up at Uncle Jonas. And so, yeah, I think about him every day. And I think about, we've lost so many obviously, across the military, but inside our community as well, we continue to lose people, and have lost so many people, and so many of my close friends and former teammates that it just makes every moment and every day precious. And you want to make sure that you're intentional with your time and that you're not wasting any of the opportunities that their service has afforded us.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's an incredible story about you and Jonas's sister. Wow, that's serendipity one way or another, right?
Yeah.
And also, as a father of twins, I'll tell you this, you already know it, but it's always zone defense. You never play man. Never play man with twins. It's always zone.
Well, I tell you, I think SEAL training is far easier than being a parent. There's no question, and especially being a parent of twins. There's not a day that has gone by over the last couple of years that I haven't looked for a bell, and there's no bell to ring in my house. At least in SEAL training, you don't ring the bell, but at least you know it's there. Like if I want off this ride, I can, and I have yet to find that in parenthood.
Yeah, see, the problem with parenthood is like, even after a rough day in SEAL training, they give you some downtime. You go out, you tie one on, right?
There you go.
Feel like you let loose. The problem is there's only one thing worse than taking care of children hungover, and that's flying hungover. And so there's no more miserable experience. So even when you get a little time to go out and do what you want to do, yeah, it ends up coming back to bite you in the ass the next day. So I've learned that too with twins, that everyone's like, that's got to be tough. I always tell them, look, I have twins. I don't have a reference point for one. I assume one's easier, but since two are always around, I'll never really know. Yeah. So
it's anyway. Always chaos.
Right. Exactly. That's part of it. Controlled chaos. Well, listen, thank you so much. An amazing story. I certainly appreciate, you sharing it all with us and your journey. And again, continue to support getmadefor.com. Madefor is the company, but getmadefor.com. To get more on Pat's company. Again, free to military folks and military veterans. So I'm signing up and I'll reach out to you afterwards to get started. But again, congratulations to Pat Tillman Scholar, Wharton School of Business, started your own company, and just everything has been an incredible journey from the Naval Academy on. So I appreciate you sharing it with us.
Thanks, Mark, for the invite. Enjoyed the conversation, and thanks for the work you do to spread these stories and for your continued service.
Thank you very, very much. It's been great talking to you, and I certainly appreciate all that you've done and all that you're continuing to do. And we ended always with Patrick Dossett. Thanks for being part of the Hazard Ground.
Cheers.
You've been listening to Killcliffe's Hazard Ground podcast, hosted by Mark Zeno. If you have an interesting story to tell and you'd like to be on the show, send us an email at producer@hazardground.com. And if you like the show, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.